So I think I got some really bad news to tell you. I'm pretty confident that as soon as you find out what it is, you're gonna click out of this video, possibly unsubscribe. Definitely will start calling me names. I mean, that's a given, because I've had to tell you this kind of news before, and I bet there's 20 or 30 people that need to call me names. I have made these videos before, like I said, and I really had hoped that this would be a good thing, but it's not. I'll be called wussy, except take out the W, put a P in. And I just don't know how to handle this, because I think part of off-grid living requires that we think about food. And so when I talk about food, nobody watches, they get mad and angry. Same thing with the well. I find that interesting. So anything that requires a substance, and what I always say is there's 4 things that you have to survive: food, water, shelter, and defense. And there's only 2 types of videos that do well on my channel out of those 4: shelter and defense. But when I talk about food and water, no. It's just frowned upon. Like, my audience seems to be superior in those aspects. So I need you to do me a favor. I know you're going to hate this video, but if you would, just watch it all the way through. You can turn down the volume on your phone, go do something else for 15 minutes, come back if you need to. Don't play it in fast forward speed. And the reason I'm asking you to do this is because there are some people who are going to need this video. My audience doesn't like these videos, and they'll click out, and so YouTube will think nobody likes it, and they'll won't promote it to the people who do want it. If you'll give it a thumbs up, that would be awesome. Also, make sure you watch it all the way through at normal speed, not at fast speed. Watch time is so critical, probably more critical than the thumbs up. And then, of course, make sure that you leave a nasty comment down below. Tell me how terrible I am, because what we're going to do today is we're going to can chicken again. Now, don't click out. Stick with me. People learn something new every time I make this video. Now, I have noticed that I've gotten a lot of comments, not a lot, over the years, saying I've started canning just because of you. Now, I don't make my canning videos very boring. I know some canners, people, will show you how to fill all 20 jars. I might show you how to fill half a jar, just so you have an idea what it's like. Then I'll move on to the next step. I try to keep a pretty fast pace. So let's get started. So ignore the sleeping bag that we've got hung up here. We use that to help keep the heat in the camper, because when we're doing it in the winter time, we got these stoves burning. It puts out a lot of heat, so holds the heat in here, and I can work longer. I got up 4:30 this morning. We started cooking some chicken. It was pretty cold in here, washing dishes, and we don't have a water heater in here, so if we have to wash our hands, it's in cold water. So we have deboned all the chicken. After we cooked it, we made sure that it just fell off the bone. It takes I don't know, I start at 4:30, get the chicken into the pots, and by 8 o'clock, 8:30, somewhere around there, it's done. So I guess about 4 hours. Doesn't seem like that long, but that's what it is when you do the math. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill these jars. We have 16-quart Presto canners, and we got 2 of them. So we'll be able to can 20 jars. People have asked me about the broth. Some people don't even know what broth is. So when you cook it, you boil it in water, simmer it in water for 4 hours, and then you have the leftovers, the leftover water. That's the broth. So we will can this also. I never show how to can this. The canner that you buy from Walmart has instructions on how to can all kinds of stuff, including broth. This only takes, I think, don't quote me. I always look how long I'm supposed to can for, so don't quote me. But I think you can this for 20 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and fill the jars. So I have this funnel here that I use, because you try to keep as much of the garbage off the rim of the jar, so it'll seal when you put your lids on. So we'll put some chicken in it. I'm going to pack these a lot tighter than what the instructions tell me to, because I've learned the more that I put in it, the better I have it sealing on Tadler lids. We're going to be using Tadler lids. Tadler lids are a 2-piece component. You got the white lid, and then you have a ring. I've been doing a lot of experiments, and I found the fuller I get the jar, the better these seal. I think we had a 100% success rate last time we canned. We bought 4 bags of 10-pound bags of chicken for 8 something a bag. So it was 89 cents a pound. We used to only buy 3 bags, but since I'm packing them so tight for Tattler lids, we used those 3 bags, and we had, I don't know, 7 or 8 jars left over. So we went ahead and got 4, which is great news, because the more you can the better. Okay, so all 20 jars are now filled with chicken, and I filled them tight. We had 4 jars left over, so I will fill those with just broth. So now what I got to do is I got to fill this jar, all the gaps and the air bubbles and all that, with broth. So we'll take that broth that we made when we boiled the chicken, we'll fill this up, and then you got to get the air bubbles out of it. So you have this little knife. You can buy all this into a set at Amazon, and then you get that broth down into the chicken. And the goal is to get it right up to this line here. Okay, so all the jars are now filled with the chicken, broth, and the jars that I had remaining I filled with broth. And the reason you want to use those jars regardless is because you can't have blanks in the canner. So I would have 4 spots that didn't have a spot. That means the jars could have fallen over. So just go ahead and fill your canner up with something else. That takes less time to can than the chicken. So in this case, broth takes 20 minutes and chicken takes an hour and 15 minutes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use some apple cider vinegar, put it on my washcloth here, and I spill it all over the floor, get that saturated pretty good. Of course, I mop up the floor several times a day. And then what we're going to do is we're going to clean the ring on the jar. And so I put that on there and I press it pretty tight and spin it around several times. The lids on the jars now, I got all the lips and the rings cleaned off on the jar. So I'm going to do 2 types of lids. One, I'm going to do the metal lid on the broth. I'm going to do Tattler lids on the chicken. I said earlier that we had a 100% success rate. I should have mentioned we had a 100% success rate with chicken. The broth, we had a few failures. So I'm going to go ahead and use metal lids because I've always had a lot of, well, I don't think I've ever had a failure with a metal lid. So you saw I picked that up with the magnet in of this knife. Now, with the metal lids, there's really no special trick to it. You put the lid on, and then there's a ring that you put on it. And you just kind of hand tighten it. It's really not a big deal. But with the Tattler lids, there is a bit of a trick. Now, obviously I can't use my magnet with the Tattler lid, so you just have to burn your fingers. So with the Tattler lid, it's a 2-piece. So when you hold it, you want to hold it with both fingers like that. You set it on the jar, and then you check all the way around it to make sure you see that orange or red ring. And then when you tighten the ring on this one, you don't just hand tighten it. You take 2 fingers, you press down at the center, and you turn until the jar turns. That's all you got to do. Okay, so I'm also going to put 3 quarts of water inside the canner that is completely empty. And then you put the jars in after you put the water. Lid to the canner has a little gasket in it, an O-ring or whatever you call it, a gasket. We're going to take that gasket out, set the lid to the side. I'm going to take a little bit of lard. Now, we don't eat vegetable oil, so you're supposed to use vegetable oil, but I'm sure lard works just as good. And we're going to lubricate this ring. These rings have to be replaced every 3 years according to the instructions. I think we're on our 3rd year. Now, I have a spare set, but I don't know. I'm thinking as long as it's not leaking, I might use it, but that's not recommended, and I don't suggest you do it, but I might do it. Then we're going to put the ring back in. It just pops right back in. It's not hard to do at all. And then we're gonna line up some arrows on this thing. I never can find them. Okay, so there's an arrow on the handle and there's an arrow on the lid. You line it up and you turn. All right, so we're just gonna let these heat up now. When steam starts to come out of the jiggler valve hole, this is what the jiggler looks like. When steam starts to come out of that, then we'll let the steam come out for 10 minutes. And after 10 minutes, we'll put the jiggler on. Then we wait until the jiggler starts jiggling. And then we'll set our timer for the amount of cook time. Okay, so the steam, I really don't know if you can see that, is coming out. It's been coming out for 10 minutes now. So now we're gonna put our jigglers on. As soon as that happened, you may have saw this pop up. See if we can do it on this side. Those are the tabs that tell you that there's pressure inside the canner. So now what we have to do is we have to wait until these start jiggling. This pops up and those start jiggling. And once they start jiggling, then we can set our timer. There, I helped it along. So now you can see that it popped up. Both of these canners are under pressure now. So if you were to take these off, it would be a jolt. It would come up after you. Okay, so they're both jiggling now. This one started jiggling quite a bit earlier than the other one. Not sure why. I went ahead and centered the canners up a little bit better. See, that one stopped again. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on this one. You can't start the timer until that thing is fully engaged. So, well, I guess it didn't completely stop. It's just really slow. So, but anyway, if they stop jiggling, you have to start the timer over because you don't have them under pressure for the whole amount of time. So as soon as I get these to settle out, I'll go ahead and set the timer for 1 hour and 15 minutes. These jigglers, you can disassemble them, and each disassembly is 5 pounds. So you can have 5 pounds of weight, 10 pounds of weight, or 15 pounds of weight, depending on your altitude. So we're at 1,000 feet, just at 1,000 feet. I mean, we're right there. So I went ahead and used 15 pounds. Typically, I show you how to disassemble them, but they're not that hard. They just slip right off. Okay, so the hour and 15 minutes has elapsed, so we're going to shut off the burners. Now the jigglers will stop eventually. Then we'll sit and wait until these tabs fall down again. The ones I just showed you that popped up. When those fall down, then the pressure will release and we can let it go. Then we'll wait 5 minutes and then we'll take the lids off, take the jars out, and then I'll show you what we do with the Tadler lids. Okay, so the tabs have fallen down now. So that means there's no pressure in the canner. So now we can take the jigglers off and there's no explosion or anything. Okay, so I've waited 5 minutes after I took the jigglers off. I don't know why you're supposed to do that, but that's what you're supposed to do. I've never understood that. So now we'll take the lid off. Now I'm going to take the jars out and I'm going to hold them up to the camera, one of them up to the camera, a couple of them. If the jar is boiling, then I'm not going to do a thing to it. I'll just set it aside, let it cool. But if it's not boiling, then I know that it hasn't drawn into a vacuum, because the vacuum means it boils at lower temperatures than regular. So if it's not boiling, then I need to crank it down to get a better seal, and we'll set that over to the side. That way I know those are suspect. Okay, this one's boiling. Now it is hard to see in the camera for some reason, but I'll try to hold it still. So that means I don't need to do anything. That one has sealed. This one originally came out boiling, but I heard a squeal like an air leak, like from your tire. So I started searching for the one, seeing if I could listen to it. I picked this one up, took it in the other room, it stopped boiling. So I tightened the lid, and now the squeal has stopped. So my suspicions are it will seal now, but I gotta set it over the side because now it's suspect. I wanna make sure that I check the ones that are suspect tomorrow very thoroughly, because you gotta let these sit for 24 hours to cool. Or successful day as far as sealing jars. So we had 3 that are not boiling. So that one I showed you that was squealing, I've never heard that before, so that was interesting. So it did seal, or at least had enough vacuum that it was boiling, but as it was cooling and leaking, it stopped boiling. And then I had 2 others that didn't boil. So typically, the odds of 3 of them coming out like that and all of them not sealing is pretty low. I might get 1 that won't seal, but I suspect all those will seal just fine tomorrow. Just tighten down the lid good and snug, and then tomorrow we'll check them and see if they sealed. These all should seal. I've never had one other than that one today where it was squealing, but I heard it. I've never had one that was bubbling that didn't seal. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to a video where I was showing you how to wire up a switch. So I hope I can inspire you to be a wussy so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.